Welcome back, folks, to the Mailwright Show. This is episode 254. It's going to be an internal discussion between me and my great co-host, Robert Newman. Basically, I'm going to be interviewed by Robert, and you're going to find out more about me, shock and horror, about why I started Mailwright, what it offers, and also some more info about my background. I can't say I'm totally looking forward to it, but it's got to be done. Robert's put me in a corner, the swine, but there we go. Robert, would you like to quickly introduce yourself to the new listeners and viewers? We've had quite a few new people listening to the show recently, Robert, which is great news, isn't it?
Yes, very much so. My name is Robert Newman. I am a 13-year veteran of the real estate marketing industry. I'm a lifetime veteran of sales and marketing in general. And I've been publishing a website called inboundrem.com, which is intended to fill the void for somebody who actually has a lot of experience and teach you, the people that are listening to the show, about digital marketing, not just marketing, not real estate marketing, but digital marketing specifically.
That's great. And I'm the founder of Mailwright. It's an inclusive platform that has a really easy to use CRM. But the main thing is we get you quality leads. And how we do that is utilizing the power of Facebook. We produce and run Facebook campaigns for you. We generate leads that go into our CRM. You are text with those leads, and then you can contact them, and then you can turn them into actual customers. That sounds fantastic, and it is. Want to find out more about Mailwright? Go to the Mailwright website. You can book a free consultation with me. We can discuss if Mailwright is the right platform for you, and please do take advantage of that. I'm always happy to talk to agents. So over to you, Robert, over to the interrogation.
So there's going to be a little bit of history here, John. I'm going to do a preamble. I'm going to do a warm-up. So for everybody who's listening to the show, this is about my 100th or so episode that I've been doing with John, and I'd never done a podcast before. Actually, an old partner of John that used to do the podcast with him found me on a real estate blogging site called Active Rain. And I was asked to be a guest on the show, and that was my first exposure. That's the first time I ever met John. And this would be about 2 years ago, maybe a little bit more even. And over the years that I've been doing the podcast, I've developed a deep respect for John's diligence and his pursuit of what is actually quite complicated, which is building a piece of technology within the real estate space. So we've learned a lot from each other. I've learned a lot from John, and that led me to say that I wanted to talk a little bit more about John's history and background, because it doesn't get discussed a lot on the show, and the audience is growing. And I'm having a lot of you who are reaching out to me, because I already have a very large platform that gets a lot of real estate exposure, talking to me about the show. And I realize that constantly people are referencing my co-host as this English guy that I talk to on the show, which is a little unfair, because John he may not have started in the real estate industry as I did, but he absolutely has made his home there. And he's.
Well, I do think I understand the fund. I'm a bit like you. You haven't been an active real estate agent, and I haven't, and we both make that totally clear. But I think, hopefully you would agree with this, I know that you understand the industry from top to bottom. And I think now, with your help and with doing the podcast, I have a pretty good understanding of the industry from top to bottom. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would agree with that. And so to fishtailing off that, John, here's what the audience may not know. So John, I reference it, and John references it often. This is not actually his first technology venture. He has another one in place, which is called WP Tonic. Yeah. And WP Tonic is very different. It's a very different business. He has a business that is focused on learning management systems and WordPress, and he builds websites for people doing education, which that business has actually been real hot lately from what John has been telling me, because as we all were forced to go and work from home and change our habits, of course, many people are going, gee, maybe now is the time that I put XYZ course online and try to sell my expertise digitally. And John is really good at that. The WP Tonic Show has a huge audience.
Well, I would
And
say huge, but it's got about double the Mailrite audience. But I've got to say, the Mailrite audience has been consistently going up over the past few months.
Excellent. Well, let me market you, man. Huge. It's huge. As far as I'm concerned, if it's double our show, it's huge because it's twice as big. So as far I'm going to say huge, I'm going to stick with that.
Yeah, well, I've been doing it for 6 years, though.
Like Tom Ferry yet, but we're getting there. We'll get there. I'm absolutely.
We regularly outperform Tom Ferry.
Excellent.
Don't you realise that we get twice the audience than he does?
I did not realize that. That makes me unbelievably happy. All right. So having said that, that's a huge windup. So for all of those folks that are listening, who is this John guy? Who's this English guy that I do this show with? What's his history? What's his background? So John, let's talk a moment about how did you get into being a web-based entrepreneur in the first place? Like it doesn't matter whether it's WP Tonic or Mailrite. Like, how did you get into that?
Well, basically, I got into retailing in the UK, and I started my first business, and I run it for almost over 20 years. And I started it when I was 23. My father was a guarantor of a commercial loan, which I didn't appreciate the risk he was taking. I was only 23. I was still living at home. I think the other thing you've got to understand is that I have dyslexia, and I'm reasonably open about that. I've got moderate to severe dyslexia, and I'm a reasonably bright guy. I think you would agree with that. I know you're a bright guy, Robert, and most of my friends are pretty bright people. They're doers, and that's what I like about the real estate industry. There's a lot of doers in it. But I didn't do fantastic at school because the condition, and to some extent, it's still not fully understood even now. But the situation in American Britain is a lot better than when I was at school in the 60s and 70s, right?
Right.
So I left school with no qualification at all. And I don't think it actually matters really, unless you're going to become a physicist or a doctor or a lawyer, a real high level professional. But it did bother me because it was a bit of a chip on my shoulder. So I started my first retail business, and I grew that. It was actually in dry cleaning. And I grew that to where I had a workforce of full-time and part-time people of about 50 people. And we had a turnover of about, I'm going to roughly put this into dollars, of about $6 million.
Okay.
Right. And the profit margin, it changed, but there was a period where the gross profit was about 40%. So I'm just giving you, dry cleaning at a certain time was highly profitable.
Sure.
It was actually one of the most profitable businesses a lot of hard work though. And also being it's in retail, you do learn about customer care and being consistent about quality and service.
Sure.
Because you soon learn about how to implement systems. That doesn't mean that every week you're dealing with very unhappy people, which still happened occasionally, but for the amount of clientele that we were dealing with on a weekly to monthly basis was quite minor, really, in less than 1%.
Okay.
But you've got to have systems. And if you don't have systems, you soon get overwhelmed. But then I married an American lady. She was living in London. She come over. She was working for a US bank, and we met, and I married her. And I was thinking of selling the business anyway because I was a little bit burnt out. And also I could see that on a couple of my best retail units that the landlords were going to really increase the rents to ridiculous figures. I could see it on the writing that they were planning to do that. And the thing is, you can only sell a business when it's profitable. When it becomes less profitable, it's much harder to sell. So I could see not that we were going to lose clientele, but my cost base was going to get much higher, and the gross profitability of the business was going to be drastically reduced. And it was either I was going to have to expand the business, which I really didn't want to do, or find some way of reducing costs. And I kept my costs under pretty tight control. So I wouldn't say I could see the writing on the wall, but I could see that the profitability of the business was going to be affected. Right. So my wife wanted to move back to America, and I agreed to it, not solely because she wanted to, but also I could see that it might be the best time to sell the business.
Sure.
That selling a business is almost as bad as trying to build a business, listeners and viewers. It took almost 18 months to sell the business. When you're in a more profitable business, it's a bit like being in the luxury real estate business. There's a lot less people that can actually buy a $1 million, $3 million, $4 million house. It's a bit like when you've got a business that's doing a fair bit of turnover. There's less people available to actually buy it, and you get a lot of tire kickers. And I didn't want to self-finance because I wanted to go to America. So in the end, I sold it to a manager of mine who had a couple family members who helped finance the purchase, and I had to discount my purchase price quite considerably to get a cash buyer, somebody who was prepared to buy it for cash, where I didn't have to self-finance. Is that making sense, Robert?
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
Yeah.
So you found somebody to buy it in cash. It was somebody that worked for the business. And now finally, after 18 months and a long, long journey, you were ready to move to the beautiful United States.
With my wife. And in the meantime, I had gone to university as a mature student, full time, but I was still running my business. And I had done that before I met my wife. And in Britain, the university course is only for 3 years, not 4 years. And I just wanted to go to university as a personal challenge, and also deal with the way that I'd been treated as a child through my dyslexia, because I hadn't been like sexually assaulted or any of the other terrible things you hear that other
Boy,
people,
you just got dark real fast.
That's dark stuff. But I had been verbally abused by teachers, and on a couple of occasions I've been hit by teachers just because I had dyslexia.
Okay.
Pardon?
I said, okay, that's terrible, but okay.
So, but compared to other people's stories, you've got to keep it in perspective. But I did have a little bit of a chip on my shoulder about it, which is understandable, isn't it, Robert?
Yeah, no, very much so.
Even though I had been in financial terms a lot more successful than a lot of people. So I decided to go to university, and I was interested in the web.
Okay.
We're talking about 96, 1996, 1997, I had computers for a while.
23 years ago, for those of you who are counting, like me.
Yeah. And the internet had just been introduced to Britain. You had a modem, very slow modem, very slow computers. And this course was the second only course in Britain, but the university was about a mile away from my main business, walking distance. And it was the only second course in the London area that dealt with what was called multimedia. At that time, it was called multimedia. The burning of CD-ROMs, building courses or training on CD-ROMs, or on now the new web. And I was fascinated by it, and I've always been interested in technology. So I thought, why not do the course? And at that time in Britain, you could do a course totally free.
Right.
There was no charge.
Okay.
All right. Which has changed a bit. It's still a lot cheaper to go to university in Britain than America, folks, even now. But they are charging around $15,000 per year now to go to university. So it's got which is a lot more than free. So I think we're close to our break, actually. So we're going to go for a break, and you're going to hear more about me already. You probably heard too much already, but we'll be back soon with more about my background, folks.
There we go.
We're coming back. You've been hearing about a long-winded journey, but there we go. So I did this university degree in 3 years at the same time. And really, the internet, nobody knew what they were really doing. And certainly my instructors at the university had no clue what they were doing. But I got into Flash. Now, Flash was a technology made by a company called Macromedia. And they also did a tool called Director, and also they had a web building tool called Dreamweaver. And they were all very, very popular, and they were in direct competition to Adobe. And Director you used to publish CD-ROMs, and Dreamweaver used to utilize that to build websites. And they had a couple other products as well, but they were in direct competition to Adobe. And they had this product called Flash, which you could use to make games, intros to websites. You used to have this intro, and the rest of the website used to be loaded in the background. This is all in the distant past now, where we're looking at 5G and video on demand. Well, most of the internet was really dog slow when I got involved in it. And I became a Flash developer, and I did some freelance work after my degree, just as a kind of side. I didn't actually have to do it for the financial reason, but I wanted to keep my hand in it because it seemed a bit of a waste of time on doing a degree and not keeping your skills up to date. And then basically the iPhone kind of killed off Flash, because when the iPhone was introduced, you couldn't play Flash on it. Steve Jobs had a consistent history with Adobe, and he had a personal hatred of Adobe, and you couldn't run Flash on the iPhone. So it died a bit of a death. But at the same time, we sold the business and I moved to America, and I became, I took a year off, and then I became a kind of freelance web developer for some agencies. That's how I first started doing some work in America, Robert.
Okay, so you get to America and you're doing some freelance work. Now that takes us probably what, to the early 2000s?
I moved to America in a fantastic time to move, Robert. I moved to America about the middle of 2006.
Okay.
And I
So
took a
you're
year
now,
off, and guess then I have moved, but I moved with a fair whack of money, not as much as I had hoped for, because like I say, to get a cash buyer, I had to change how much I was prepared to take for my business, right? I had to be a little bit more realistic about the price.
sure.
And then I
So,
moved, but I had a substantial amount of money, but also we were facing the worst recession in American history, weren't we?
right. So you're here, the real estate market collapses, and you've
And I
got the
thought,
skill
what
set,
had my wife persuaded me to walk into?
and you've got this skill set in web. So I'm sure that you did some more freelance work, but actually, let's visit on that for a second. So you're here. It's 2006, 2007, and you're making, like, when you do decide to work again, you're working in freelance, like, Flash development, right?
That had died because of the iPhone. I had moved on to general website development, and around 2012, I'd taken a year off, so 2008, and then I was just kind of using Dreamweaver and hand coding sites. And then around 2012, I was introduced. I thought there must be a better way than this. There were some platforms like Joomla, and there were some others. And then somebody said, "Why don't you look at this thing called WordPress?" And I said, "Well, that's just a blogging platform." "Oh, no, it's maturing out." So I was introduced to WordPress around 2012, and I was getting some web work, but you got to understand, but I was having to live off my savings as well quite a bit, because I was just working for local agencies, and the recession in Reno, before the recession, Reno and Northern Nevada had, a bit like Florida, was the epicenter of the building boom in North America. There was an army of contractors here building houses everywhere. And funny enough, in a 6-month period, they all lost their jobs, and there was whole areas half built, Robert, whole areas half built, and they were just left like that way for 5 years, Robert.
Okay, so you're here. You're now in Reno. You're doing some web development work. You're living off your savings because you have to supplement your income. When does WP time come into the picture?
Well, I started that around 2014, 2015. Unfortunately, like a lot of people, because of the stresses of the recession and other factors, unfortunately, my marriage broke up, and that cost me a hell of a lot of money. And I still had a bit left in savings, but I was still having to subsidize because I just wasn't getting enough web work locally. And I thought, Einstein said once that the real sign of madness is doing the same thing and thinking you're going to get a different result.
Right.
I'm very strong-willed, but it became obvious to me that trying to get local work in Reno wasn't going to pan out for me, even if the situation, because the recession had been terrible in Northern Nevada. So I decided, and then I did a job which was around building a membership site and using a learning management system, and it was a really fantastic project. Somehow the client had been recommended to me. They were based in New York, though, and we were using Zoom, we were using Skype at the time to communicate, and Google Hangouts, but the project still went really well. And I thought to myself, why don't, instead of trying to get local clients, why don't you just go into a Pacific vertical and try and get clients in that area? And that's how I changed the whole emphasis of the business around learning management systems. And that was around 2014, 2015.
Okay. So for those of you who are listening, I personally follow the WP Tonic podcast. It's fun. Oftentimes they wrangle 2 or 3 guests simultaneously. So some of their Zoom calls, podcasts are actually 3, 4.
Well, we have 2 shows. We have a guest show where we have and then, because I do 2, really, and then we have the round table show. And so I'm doing 3 podcasts, which really is 1 too many. But I really, really enjoy the round table show. And that's when we get myself and I get a panel of WordPress junkies, as I call them. And it's just a round table discussion of the latest WordPress stories and internet stories. And really, I just do it because I enjoy doing it, where the interview show and the Mailwright show is more business focused. The reason why I do it, Robert.
Okay. So for those that don't know, and you know, we always talk about marketing on the show, and here's what my most valuable. Have I really gotten that many clients off doing the Mailwright podcast with John? No, not really. It's something, when I first agreed to be a co-host on the show, I agreed to be the co-host because I was already driving business through SEO and inbound marketing, which I talk about incessantly. And I have a huge stream of business coming from that direction. So I wasn't really even looking at this as a way to do business. I did, however, find a shocking and amazing thing that the show has delivered to me. John, who does the outreach for the show, has managed to get a staggeringly large number of real heavy-duty movers and shakers inside the real estate marketing industry. Because the funny thing is, the second you start telling somebody I have a podcast, it's kind of funny because they kind of take it the same way that they would take going on a TV show. And we had the CEO of IDX Broker on the other day. We had this chief marketing officer of Boom. And there's no way, by the way, for those people, that even with my pedigree inside the real estate industry, I would not be able to get those guys on the telephone if you gave me $1 million. John got them on the show with a single email. So for those, and then once they're on the show, I've discovered that I've learned even more about the industry that I've called home for so long. And I have found the show to be an amazing repertoire of information for me. Like we came across a guy by the name of Ricky Carruth, another find of Jonathan's, who is a coach that trains people. And now I follow him religiously on his social channels just because he has a very different approach. He's a good guy. He's making a lot of money in real estate, and he's teaching a lot of other people how to do it. I didn't even know he existed before the podcast. And now I've got him, and I've got all these people that I've met that are doing different things inside the real estate industry that I didn't even think of because I'm an inbound marketer. And the podcast showed me all of that. So I feel like I'm a much deeper resource inside my own industry. And that, I guess what I'm saying here is, and I'm not trying to detract from John's story, but he uses podcasting to market his other business. And one of the things I've enjoyed about his WP Tonic Roundtable, the show that he just mentioned, is that if you want to learn something about WordPress from what he's calling one thing, I'm going to call them WordPress geeks. But you know, you use WordPress and you discover, hey, it has its complexities. But finding out how other people have addressed those complexities, like and their solutions and how they use WordPress, it's kind of fun. Like if you're in technology, it's kind of fun. John obviously has a good time with it. I've had a good time listening to the show. So podcasting can bring a lot of value to you both as a professional, and if I understood correctly, if I've always understood you correctly, the podcast, your WP Tonic podcast, actually does drive a lot of business for WP Tonic. Is that correct, or was that just me making an assumption?
It doesn't actually. I think it builds Credos. And you build relationships that have been very, very useful for me, right? But the problem is I've not been as focused as Melwright. We're going to have to wrap up the podcast part of the show. Hopefully Robert's got 15 minutes left so we can continue the discussion. And I'm going to tell you about why I started Melwright. And it's a bit of a long, but we're going to keep it to 15 minutes of bonus.
10, John, 10. I've got 10.
And you've got 10 minutes. So join us for the bonus content, which you'll be able to see on the Melwright YouTube channel or on the Melwright website. We'll be back next week. We've got a fabulous guest next week. Well, no, actually we haven't. We've got an internal show next week, but we're going to be talking about video equipment, what you need if you want to do better video than using your iPhone. And I'll be delving into the subject in great detail. So hopefully it's going to be more interesting than my background. We'll see you soon, folks. So about Melwright. So
we're moving. So let me intro this right. So guys, we're now going to move into Melwright because we've taken the time to explore John's history. So he's explained how he got into technology, kind of some of the stuff he's doing in technology with his other business. And now we're going to talk about Melwright, which is a CRM Facebook marketing combo that is on the starter side in terms of pricing. It's much less expensive than the solutions I offer. It's actually less expensive than a lot of solutions out there. So if you're a brand new agent and you're listening to this particular show, this might be a stop in your journey to try to figure out what kind of marketing would work for you. But having said all that, how did you decide to develop Melwright in the first place?
And this has been this is going to, because we're in 2020, and this is going to sound ridiculous. I started Melwright in 2014, right? Okay. And we've got a few clients, but I haven't pushed it as much as I could. But I'm going to explain, well, it's going to make sense to me, but maybe it isn't that. But you've got to understand that I've tried to build something rather that's ended up being in a technology level, rather complicated. And I've bootstrapped doing that out of my own savings and the profits out of WP Tonic. And I've done that on a very inexpensive scale compared to what other people have utilized to build a similar platform. But the story starts in 2014, and I was talking to a friend and I said, well, I'm just looking for a simple kind of online product that I could sell as a SaaS. And a SaaS, that means a service as
software as a service.
Software as a service, thank you. And it was a big movement. It started in around 2014. It started by some people in Chicago with a product called Basecamp, which is a project management platform.
Right.
And they had kind of publicized this whole the web as a service model. And I thought, because traditional websites, you build a website, you give a quotation, you get a 50% deposit, you do the website, you get your other 50%, and then you're on to try and get the next client. And it's feast or famine, right?
Right.
And I didn't particularly like that. So I said to a friend, I'm looking to build a really simple SaaS. And they said the friend was a copywriter, marketer, and she said, well, she said, I got some people in that I write copy for the um, in the real estate industry, and this was about middle 2014 to the third quarter of 2014. And I said, oh, well, isn't the, we've just gone through a terrible recession in Northern Nevada, and I said, well, isn't that totally, bug? No, she said it's recovering and they're starting to make some real money. And she said there's this service called Happy Grasshopper, this email service.
Sure.
And it's still going. Do you know about it?
I do indeed.
Yep. And she said it's a really simple platform. They provide really quirky emails that are sent out monthly, and you can set it to automatically send it out. And she said, why don't you look at that as a competitor? She said, you should be able to code it up. And she said, I think the concept is proven and there should be enough room for another one. So I looked at it and I thought, yeah, we could probably do this using WordPress technology. And get a copyright and write some fun little
stuff. Famous last words. Go ahead.
18 months later, a year later, 14 months later, we had built something and it did work. And then
hold on 1 second there, John. I'm going to share a secret with everybody here who's listening to the show. So listen, John and I are what are called technology entrepreneurs. I've helped many other entrepreneurs in some of my sales roles build websites and e-commerce sites and applications and mobile phone applications and email marketing systems, just the list goes on. And every single time, the one common theme amongst all of those projects is, regardless how good you are at doing it, how many times you've done it before, this stuff always, and I mean always, takes longer and costs more than you thought it would when you start the project. So that is why John and I are laughing with a little giggle, because it's like 18 months later, I have something that maybe is kind of working, right?
Well, it was a little bit harder than I thought. But the main thing is I didn't concentrate on actually getting some clients to sign up. Offer them a reduced, lifetime deal or prove the concept. So I knew nobody in the real estate industry. I thought and I understand now that Happy Grasshopper that wasn't utilizing WordPress. It was using Ruby on Rails, and it was a total custom application. They had struggled, and it was only, I forgot, it will come to me, but a real heavy hitter in the real estate training that is from the Washington area, the south, the Washington.
Anyway, John, I've got 3 more minutes, and I wanna get a little into the heart of MailRight. So what I mean by that is that, so you build this application,
and it wasn't flying, so I gave up on it for about tried to get clients. Then I started the podcast, and I was trying to get clients, and it just wasn't flying. I was going around my local area. I was persuading people through the power of my personality to sign up for it, and they didn't understand it. Why would I want to send fun messages I should be sending them marketing reports. Well, you don't want to be sending them local bloody marketing reports from your broker, because nobody bloody reads them, because most of them aren't at that stage to actually buy or in the market. That's why you should send them a fun email, because that's the target audience is a lot further out on the buying cycle, but they just couldn't get it, Robert. And I was getting people into the system, but as many as I was getting into the system, after about 3 months, they were stopping their subscription to it. Right.
Welcome to our pain. So because, and this is my fault, I am on a timeline today. I've got
You're always on a timeline.
And I've got something scheduled. I usually do. That's true, and I do today as well. And I usually need a small break between this and the next thing. But I think at another time, because
we have to
reference this show, the next internal discussion, I want to cover with John what some of the inspirations were in developing this product, because we've had chats. He's changed direction on some of the things he's built, and now he's deep into case studies on the CRM. He's also got a university product that he's just getting ready to launch that I'm anxiously awaiting for, and I hope that all of you are anxiously awaiting for it too. But I wanted to give everybody a little bit more background, which I think you got on John. And mostly, if I had to say, and for those of you that follow me on my website, you know that there's nobody and no amount of money that's going to make me change my opinion, no matter who they are. And what I love about John is that in order to be successful in technology, you have to be surprisingly persistent. You really have to kind of come at it and keep coming at it over and over and over and over again, because your job technically is rarely done. By the time you're using something that you like, no matter what it is, whether it's a thing on your phone or somebody has probably changed that thing 100 times, maybe 150, to get it to the point where you look at it and go, oh, this is really cool. I like using it. Like, that's where millions and millions of dollars go into development, is making these minute, consistent, ongoing changes. And I've been watching John work on the CRM product for the entire 2 years that I've been doing the show, and it keeps getting better and better and better. And so I will anxiously await the time that we can do a show and talk about what you've developed with the CRM, because I think
we have to do,
our audience,
because we're getting close to, actually, we're going to be doing some Facebook marketing and offering lifetime deals and really getting serious. But I should have done this about 3 years ago. But when you feel uncomfortable about market fit, and you're uncomfortable. Well, I will have to explain it next time about the journey of MailRight, which it's been a kind of winding road. But when you're bootstrapping something and you haven't initially found market fit, it is going to be a really winding road, because you're financing it and you've got to make a decision. Am I just going to give up on it and just concentrate on my business that's really making some decent money? And I've decided not to, and that's and maybe I'm going to be wrong, or maybe I'm going to be proven right, that in the end, because I feel in the next year I've got to either prove MailRight or walk away. But I think it's a great platform, and we've done a great job about offering a integrated platform that offers really great value to our clients. But I'm just going to have to prove it, ain't I, Robert?
Yep, absolutely.
All right, I think we called this a day. We'll see you next week, folks.
Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate it. Oh, hey.